Welcome to this explainer. Okay, if you've ever felt like you're just this constant work in progress, perpetually running behind schedule and becoming your quote-unquote best self, you are absolutely in the right place. Today, we're diving into Cora Vane's hilarious, totally eye-opening, and frankly, super liberating deconstruction of the modern self-help industrial complex. So, grab a seat, put away that color-coded planner for a second, and let's get right into it. Let's start by validating a very, very specific feeling. We're talking about that deep, bone-weary exhaustion. And no, not the kind of tired you get from a long day at work. I'm talking about the exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to optimize your entire existence. You know the kind. It's the tired you feel after you've forced yourself through the morning routine, the evening routine, the ice baths, the intensive journaling, and all that inner child work, all in this desperate attempt to make your life look like a perfect cinematic montage. Now, I want you to really think about this next question for a second. How much money, time, and energy have you actually spent trying to, quote, fix yourself? I mean, think about those $64 mindfulness journals that come with the little stickers to track your emotional weather. Or think about the countless planners you've bought, used for exactly 3 days, and then completely abandoned. We buy them because an entire industry has successfully convinced us that we're broken, and that we're just one purchase away from finally being fixed. The first great productivity illusion the author tackles is the 5 a.m. victory hour. You've definitely heard of this one. It's that pervasive myth that waking up before the sun is somehow this moral virtue that totally guarantees success. The self-help gurus tell a very clean, simple story, right? Successful people wake up early, therefore, if you wake up early, you will be successful. It completely ignores biology, life circumstances, reality, putting all the responsibilities squarely on you and your alarm clock. So the author actually tried this exact grueling morning routine prescribed by a famous productivity book. And what actually happened? Well, she spent 20 minutes doing these sad, wheezing burpees. Then she spent another 20 minutes writing down fake legendary goals, like running a marathon that she had literally zero interest in actually running. And finally, she spent 20 minutes trying to read a biography of Andrew Carnegie while barely even conscious. The result? It wasn't success. She just ended up totally sleep-deprived, miserable, and filled with this Pavlovian rage every time she heard her alarm clock. And this brilliantly illustrates how the optimization obsession doesn't just stop at our mornings. No, it infects everything. Welcome to the habit stacking trap. The author took the advice of building small atomic habits so seriously that she turned something as basic as brushing her teeth into this hyper-systematized 13-step gauntlet. She needed an auditory cue just to turn on the water. She was doing calf raises while brushing to, quote, maximize efficiency, and then she immediately had to log it all into a role-playing habit tracker app on her phone. Naturally, this level of obsession inevitably led to a massive moment of clarity. Picture her just standing there in the mirror, mid-calf raise, toothpaste literally foaming on her chin, when she suddenly realizes that her digital role-playing avatar was quite literally dictating her actual life. If she forgot to set a glass of water out the night before, her entire morning sequence broke down and she felt like a total failure. She wasn't building a better life at all. She was building a cage out of check marks. Now, this optimization obsession so easily bleeds into another massive trap, which is toxic positivity. The self-help expectation here is that getting a flat tire on the way to an important meeting must somehow be twisted into a spiritual growth opportunity or a lesson from the universe. But in reality, a flat tire just means you're having a bad, inconvenient day. Toxic positivity is really just emotional bypassing with better marketing. It essentially makes you feel like you aren't even allowed to just be unhappy when genuinely bad things happen. It's honestly fascinating how we've co-opted the language of therapy to fuel this kind of avoidance. Take the concept of holding space, for example. Originally, this was a vital clinical concept, but it has totally morphed into an aesthetic excuse to avoid doing hard things. We've adopted therapy speak to sound incredibly evolved, right? We turn basic responsibilities and difficult conversations into things we simply, quote, don't have the capacity for right now. Consider how absurdly this plays out in real life over a grueling 6-month period. The author needed to make a slightly uncomfortable phone call to an old friend. Simple enough, right? But instead of just dialing the number, she spent month 1 writing 30 pages of journaling all about her fear of rejection. By month 3, she was doing deep shadow work to analyze that fear. By month 5, she was literally pulling watercolor oracle cards to see if the timing was right. Finally, in month 6, she just made the phone call. It took 40 minutes and went totally fine. She used advanced coping mechanisms to avoid 20 minutes of vulnerability for half a year. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is how Instagram therapy language has become a form of social currency. When someone says, I'm setting a boundary, honestly, half the time they actually mean, I don't want to do this and I'm making it your problem. Words like gaslighting get thrown around just because someone disagreed with you, and boundaries are weaponized to avoid basic accountability or just to flake on your friends without feeling guilty about it. But here's the thing. All this avoidance and optimization doesn't just cost us time. It costs us real, hard-earned money. When the author finally pulled back the curtain on her own self-help industrial complex and tallied up her actual receipts over 2 years, this was the number. Over $6,000. $6,000. The financial cost of feeling constantly inadequate is just absolutely staggering when you look at it. Just look at how quickly that breaks down. Over $2,000 spent on books and courses promising to unlock her true potential. Nearly $700 on subscription apps for meditation and habit tracking that she totally forgot to cancel. And get this, over $3,000 on gear. We're talking standing desks, blue light blocking glasses, and an $80 grounding mat. And all of these purchases provided zero actual return on investment. They didn't make her happier or more productive. They only provided the temporary fleeting illusion that she was taking control of her life. And here is exactly how they get you. This is the predatory playbook of a $13.2 billion industry. First, they identify a universal human experience, like being tired. Second, they reframe it as a personal problem. You know, you're tired because your morning routine is bad. Third, they sell you an expensive, abstract solution, like a 6-week mastermind course. And step 4, which is the most important one, when it doesn't work, they blame you. You didn't believe hard enough, you didn't do the work. This is exactly what keeps you trapped in the sunk cost fallacy, always buying the next thing. It all really boils down to one incredibly predatory tactic. As the author perfectly puts it, they take a systemic problem and make it a personal problem. And personal problems can be solved with personal purchases. Think about it. If you are exhausted because you work way too much for way too little pay in a demanding economy, the industry completely ignores that reality. Instead, they tell you the problem is simply that you haven't bought the right sleep routine or the right magnesium supplement. All of this endless striving is really in service of something called the fantasy self. This is that perfectly curated Pinterest board aesthetic of a person who always wears linen, springs out of bed at 5 a.m., never doom scrolls on their phone, and has somehow transcended all human limitation. We are endlessly striving to become this optimized person. But realizing that this fantasy self is an impossible mirage that doesn't actually exist, that is the very first step to getting your freedom back. Because if you keep chasing the fantasy self, you end up with goalposts that are practically on wheels. At 22, you think you'll be happy once you get a good job. At 26, it's once you make more money. At 30, it's once you find work-life balance. And at 32, it's once you, quote, unlock your true potential. The self-help model literally guarantees that you are never quite enough in the present moment. You are always just treated like the rough draft of a future self that never, ever actually arrives. So what is the actual antidote to all this? Well, it's right here. Permission to be mediocre. We need to completely dismantle the tyranny of potential. There's an incredibly freeing realization waiting for you, and it's that you can just be an okay, unoptimized, completely average human being. You don't have to be exceptional at everything. You don't owe the world a perfectly optimized version of yourself. When you adopt this perspective, your entire life gets reframed. Things that industry tells you need to be, quote, fixed, like eating a sad dinner standing over the sink at 10 p.m., feeling unmotivated, wasting time on a Sunday, or procrastinating. These aren't actual defects. They aren't signs that you're broken and need a brand new productivity framework. They are simply what it's like to be a living, breathing human being in a messy world. And that brings us to the core truth that you really need to walk away with today. You are not a project running perpetually behind schedule. You were fine. You were fine before the industry convinced you that you weren't. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to be optimized. And you definitely don't need to spend your entire life managing yourself like a publicly traded company. I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. What if you didn't, quote, improve at all? What if you stopped trying to become someone else and just lived your life exactly as you are right now? Would that really be a tragedy, or would it actually be incredibly peaceful? Take a deep breath, close your habit tracking app, and just be yourself today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.